Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Hello and Shalom Aleichem, welcome back. Today's Daf is Menachos Kuf Gimel. We begin at the Mishnah, which is 6 lines from the top of the Yomit. So typically a classic mincha contains wheat flour. Actually, it has to be pure soilus, which are the flakes. So pure flour. It's meant to be with shemen and levoina, accompanied with mixed with oil, accompanied with levoina. It's meant to be a full isarein, which is 1/10 of an ephah. Okay, so those are the standard elements that are found in a typical mincha. A fellow gets up and says, you know what, I'm going to bring an abnormal, an unusual type of mincha, something which is original. Okay, Ha'emer, says the Mishnah, Re'alai, mincha, I'm going to bring a mincha, instead of wheat, it's going to be made of barley, Menachos. What now? Says the Mishnah, you can't. But you can't just ignore it. You have to bring a standard mincha. Yavi menachitim. Now you'll ask why he only promised Seirim. The Gemara will discuss that. And likewise, regarding all the other attempts at deviation, he promises to bring kemach, which is unsifted, not properly sifted material. Yavi soilus. No, he has to bring a proper mincha made of soilus. He promised a mincha b'loy shemen or b'loy levaina without these components. He's got to bring it with yavi shemen or levaina. He promises only a half a yisarein, chatzi yisarein. Says the Mishnah, yavi yisarein shalom. He'll bring a full yisarein as a mincha. What if he promises 1.5 yisarein umechza? I'm going to bring a mincha comprised of 1.5 yisarein of material. Can he do that? No. Yavi Shnai must bring a full 2, because there's no such a thing as bringing halves. So it's either 1 or 2. In this case, it's got to be 2. Reb Shimon Paiter, Reb Shimon says, you know what? In all these cases, there's no need for him to bring any mincha, because when he promised this type of unusual, package, that's not what a mincha is made of, and therefore, in a sense, he didn't promise anything. Rabbi Shimon Paiter, he didn't pledge in a manner which is typically pledged. So he didn't commit himself to a proper, true mincha, and therefore he's exempt completely. Ask the Gemara, okay, so why does the Tanakama require him to bring a mincha made of wheat if he promised barley? Right? Mishnah begins, Harei alai mincha, I'll bring a mincha, but then he explained himself, Menachos. So if there is no such mincha, then he should be exempt. How could we obligate him to bring a wheat mincha? Yavi menachitim. The question is, why am I? Although, true, neder, there was a pledge when he said, I'm going to bring a mincha, but when he explained himself, he says, I'm going to bring it from Seirim, he's basically saying that I'm not really interested, I'm just playing games. It's like the Pesach, it's like an opening to undo the neder. It's a neder which is accompanied by a Pesach which unravels the neder. Neder upis chayimayu. Amar Chizkiah. So we have two answers. First comes Chizkiah and he says, we don't really care. He attempted to unravel his neder. Once he verbalized a commitment, a neder, he's committed to it, despite his retraction. Amar Chizkiah, we're going like Beis Shammai, who holds that once he says it, he's committed. Amar Chizkiah, Amani Beis Shammai. The Amar, you say twice, you're meant to adopt Lashon Rishon, the first element of his expression, despite his later, retraction. This not what do we find in Beis Shammai Shita, that twice Lashon Rishon. We have a Mishnah in Meseches Nazir. The Snan Hareini Nazir min ha-greigreis umin advela. So he says, I'm going to be a Nazir who typically refrains from what? From grape and wine materials. But this fellow has an original form of Nazirus. He says, I'm going to refrain from figs. Gregor's are dried figs, Dvela are pressed figs. So he's sort of contradicting himself. Here he's saying he's going to be a Nazir, and then he sort of makes up his own brand of Nazirus, which is non-existent. Nazir. He's committed to the standard Nazir process because that's what he said first. Although he sort of came back and retracted it, we ignore that second part. According to Basil, since he explained what he had in mind, so that undid his earlier expression. Right? So even though initially he says, I'm going to be a Nazir, but then since he came back and he says, from figs, that contradicts his earlier statement, and undoes it. Okay? So basically, whenever we have a contradictory expression, like I'm going to be a Nazir from figs, or like I'm going to bring a mincha from sa'irim, we focus on the first element of his expression, and he's committed to that. So says Chizkiah, and that's going to be pshat in our Mishnah. We're going like Beishamai, Tfais Lashon Mishnah. Rabbi Yechon Amar, he has a different approach to our Mishnah. I feel Beis Hillel. Our Mishnah can be following Beis Hillel as well. And I'll explain to you why he must bring a mincha from Sechitim. Right? Your question was, well, he committed, but then he sort of undid it, indicating that he had a change of heart, he never meant it, and right? I feel time Beis Hillel. But because we're speaking in our Mishnah, that he explained himself, and he says, you know what? Initially, had I realized, I didn't realize that how important it was to be chitim. If I would have realized, of course I would have committed to a regular mincha. But we're speaking that he's explaining, ilu or there. Had I only known, she'ein noidrin kach, you can't pledge a barley mincha. Lo hayisi noidir kach, I wouldn't have. Alakach, I would have done it the proper way. So there is no contradiction at all. It was a misunderstanding. So since now he's explaining, he's indicating, he's clarifying that initially his intention was to bring a proper mincha. That's what he meant, that's what he has to do. As opposed to the case of the Nazir, where nobody in the world fathoms that a Nazir has to do with figs. It's not a misunderstanding, it's not a mistake, it's not something which needs to be clarified. There, Beis Hillel say it's a non-starter. Because you can't say that's what he had in mind. He had in mind to be a regular Nazir. So when he comes back and he says figs, he's undoing what he said. Okay, so bottom line is, the Mishnah says, Harei alayich mincha min ha'sa'irim, yavi min achitim, we have Chizkiah's pshat, it's following Beis Shammai, Tfais Lashon Rishon, we follow the first part of his expression, even though it's contradictory, according to Rabbi Yechon. It will follow even Beis Hillel. We're speaking that he's explaining that it was just a misunderstanding, but initially he really meant a regular mincha. Amar Chizkiah. Continues Chizkiah. And he says, when does the Mishnah require him to bring a proper wheat mincha? That's only when he mentions sa'irim. Aval amar mincha min adashin. But had he committed to a mincha made of beans, where there is no such thing, you see, in sa'irim, there is an instance where a mincha is brought from sa'irim. There's a minchas saita, so it's one example that a private person can bring a barley mincha. So there you can say, really he wanted to bring a proper mincha, he just thought that, just like a saita brings a mincha from sa'irim, I can also do that. So there we can obligate him. But if he's to say beans, nobody in the world brings a mincha of beans. There's no room for misunderstanding, no room for confusion. So clearly, he didn't really want to bring a regular mincha. There he's not chayiv at all. Now, hold it. It doesn't really sound like it's consistent with what Chizkiah told us a minute ago, that even when it's clearly contradictory, we just ignore the second part of his expression and we focus on the first part. So what's the difference whether he's referencing barley or beans? If it's a question of misunderstanding, then there's a distinction between the two. Here he made a mistake here, but that wasn't Chizkiah's approach to the Mishnah. Michti says, well, let's take a closer look at what's going on. How did Chizkiah explain the Mishnah? Like Beis Shammai, that Tfais Lashon Rishon. Beis Shammai Mishum Tfais Lashon Rishon. Beis Shammai based on the idea of grabbing the first element of expression, and therefore, if it's Tfais Lashon Rishon, what difference does it make whether he spoke barley, he spoke beans? Mali min asor, mali min adashim. Says the Gemara Hadarbe. You're right. According to the earlier presentation of Chizkiah, there's no room for differentiation here, because it's all about what he said first, and he promised a mincha, period. Hadarbe, but really Chizkiah changed his mind. He changed his way of understanding the Mishnah. He switched over to the other approach, that the Mishnah is going like Beis Hillel, that he really misunderstood. Certainly he would have wanted to give a regular mincha. Had he only known that you have to do it from chitim, he would have said chitim. So hence that distinction, because if he says soirim, there's room to think that he made a mistake. He thought you can bring it. Now he's explaining himself that he really. But if he says adashim, nobody in his right mind would contemplate bringing a mincha from adashim. It's non-existent. So here he's certainly not serious about his commitment. Ask the Gemara, why? What triggered Chizkiah's change of approach? Amarava masnisin kashise, because the wording of the Mishnah were difficult to him. Meaning, when he analyzed the wording about Mishnah, it seemed to be inconsistent with his approach. That we're going like Beis Shammai, that it's Tfais Lashon Rishon, because then it wouldn't really matter what he concluded with, whether it was the wheat or the barley. You always focus on the first element of his expression, which is Harei Lai Mincha. So why did the Mishnah chose to pick barley? Why did the Mishnah prefer speaking about a fellow who committed to barley? Which almost sounds like because he was misunderstanding and misunderstood, and mistook that as a proper commitment, and now he's explaining, and of course he meant all along. Listen to Adashim. Mishnah should have picked a greater chiddush, that even if he promised a mincha from Adashim, which nobody thinks to be a proper mincha, still he's committed to regular mincha because Tfais Lashon Rishon. Oh, Ella, no, rather the fact that the Mishnah chose to reference barley, Shmamina, we learn from here. It's not about Tfais Lashon Rishon, irrespective of his conclusion. B'Shem D'Toyu, that the basis for the halach in the Mishnah is because of his mistake. Because we're speaking that he explained, he clarified his intention, his initial intention. B'Shem D'Toyu, and that certainly explains why it would only be applicable by barley, where there's room for misunderstanding. But Sa'irim Toy, people can make it toys when it comes to Sa'irim, thinking, well, just like Saita brings it, I'll bring it, right? Just like you bring it in Chasa'imah, right? But nobody would confuse it when it comes to beans. So in that case, it's not a matter of clarifying, it's clearly a non-starter. Clearly he was just undoing what he said. Initially he said, I'm bringing a mincha, then he changes, well, no, I'm not bringing a adasha, meaning I'm not really serious. In which case he's really not chayiv. So bottom line is, according to Chizkiah, we sort of adopt Rabbi Yechanan's approach, which is that the Mishnah, which obligates him to bring a regular mincha, is going like Beis Hillel. We don't necessarily, focus just on the first part of his expression. We focus on the entirety of his expression, but we're speaking that he clarified that initially his intention was to bring a proper mincha. He just thought that Sa'irim would fly. So one second, so according to Chizkiah, that's only true by Sa'irim, where there's room for mistake, but otherwise not. Rabbi Yechon Amar, he says, no, let me take it a step further. Afilu mina adashim. Even if he says, I'm bringing a mincha from Adashim, the same exact halacha would apply. He has to bring one of chitim. And the question is why? Michti. Let's analyze what he says. Rabbi Yechon Kman Amr Deshmait. It could be a Silal. Initially, Rabbi Yechon was following Beis Hillel in terms of understanding the Mishnah. Beis Hillel Mishum Le'toyu. And that's based on the fact that we've now concluded this fellow was making a mistake, and initially he really wanted. Well, you can only suggest mistake if it was barley, where there's room for mistake. B'sa'irn toy, ba'adashim loy toy. If he says barley, yeah, there's room for mistake because he could have confused it with other menachos that are brought as barley. But beans, nobody in his right mind thinks that you can bring a mincha of beans. Ba'adashim loy toy. So why is he committed? The answer is like this. Dvar of the Chizki Ka'amarli. Truly, the Rebbe himself, who's based on the Tos approach, would agree that it only applies to Sa'ir, not to Adashim. But there's no room for misunderstanding. But when he said Adashim too, he was simply relating to Chizki's approach. He was saying like this. Dvar of the Chizki Ka'amarli. He's addressing Chizki. Why did you change your mind? Why did you have a change of heart in terms of your approach to the Mishnah? Out my time, why did you change your mind? Initially, you had adopted the Beis Shammai approach, Tfais Lashon Rishon, and the question on that was Mishum Deloy Ketonim Nadashim. So why didn't the Mishnah speak about barley, beans? That was your question on yourself, and that prompted your sort of switch to my approach. I could provide you an answer that would address this question. Just the opposite. Perhaps the Mishnah is highlighting your approach. It goes without saying. The Mishnah doesn't have to speak about barley. It goes without saying. Of course, obviously. If he says mincha min adashim, in that case, certainly there's more room to believe, to think that he was having a change of heart, that he was switching midway, that he was retracting, he was regretting. Because if it's not something that people get confused with, so we'll presume it as an outright contradiction. We'll perceive it as a retraction. Here he's saying, I'm bringing a mincha, then he's talking nonsense, I'm bringing barley. And in this case, certainly according to Beis Shammai, Utvois Lashon Rishon, we should focus on the first part of his expression. Right? Because, look, it's too late, you've committed yourself, you said mincha, you can't just play games and retract. And that's a more simple application of Utvois Lashon Rishon. Where there was a clear retraction, we ignore the retraction, we focus on the Lashon Rishon. Elafilu, the Mishnah is trying to highlight a bigger chiddush. To say that even where the retraction isn't so evident, not so obvious, perhaps there was a misunderstanding, perhaps, even there, we ignore that possibility and we focus on the first part of the expression. Elafilu min ha-sa'irin. Even in a case where he says mincha min ha-sa'irim, even there, where there's room to speculate, perhaps he was truly making a mistake. It was an honest mistake. He thought you can bring a mincha from sa'irim, not realizing that you can't. So perhaps in that case, we should just exempt him. Even there, says the Mishnah, no. We don't look for explanations, we don't look for rationalizations and clarifications. You said what you said. Tfois Lashon Rishon, Harelai Mincha, we stop there, you have to bring a regular Mincha. Okay. So again, let's recap. The halacha of the Mishnah is where a fellow got up and pledged a Mincha with unusual, elements. Instead of wheat, he's speaking barley, kemach, without shemen, without lavoina, half a sarin, 1.5. In all these cases, the Mishnah says, you got to do it right. Why? We have two explanations. Either Tefais Lashon Rishon, in which case whether he referenced barley or beans. We ignore the second, we just focus on the Harei La Mincha part, and he's chayv to bring a regular mincha. According to Rabbi Yechanan, we're going like Beis Hillel, and we're speaking about a specific case where he explains that initially he really meant to bring a regular mincha, he was just confused, and therefore he must do so. We turn to Talmud Beis. Amar Zeiri. So Zeiri relates back to the first approach in the Gemara that we follow Beis Shammai, Tfois Lashon Rishon. He's committed to the first part of the expression, irrespective of what followed. Amar Zeiri Lashon, it's only true, Amar Mincha. If he actually expressed the word Mincha, I'm going to bring a Mincha min hasoirim. So the word Mincha allows us to stop short in our track, so to speak, and we deem him committed to a mincha, to a proper mincha. Because the word mincha is a standalone commitment. I'm bringing a mincha, a regular classic mincha. So even if he follows with the word sa'ir, it's irrelevant. We disregard it. But suppose he didn't use the word mincha. Rashi says, let's say he said minchas sa'ir. Right? So the word mincha led to sa'irim. Minchas sa'irim. Right? So since it was connected with that adjective, he's not committed to regular mincha. You can't say, well, ignore the, this word and just pick that word. It's one continuum. It's one expression. It's one description. Avaloi Amar Mechaloi. Yosef Rav Nachman. Kamal Shmait. Rav Nachman sitting and saying over this halacha. Eis Rav Nachman says, Rav, I have a question to you. Mishnah says he committed to bringing kamach, which is not the right material. We're obligating him to bring yavi seilis. Lav d'lo yomer mincha. Now the Mishnah did not reference the word mincha in that part of the Mishnah. Apparently, even if it was without the word mincha, the same halacha applies. Says the Gemara, lo yomer mincha was speaking that he did actually verbalize the word mincha. He said that re'elai mincha from kamach. So in this case, again, he has to bring a mincha made of seilis because the word mincha on itself is committal. And again, the Gemara goes through all the cases of the Mishnah with the same question and the same response. Right? The next case is beloy shem and lavoina. He has to bring yavi with shem and lavoina. My lab or sumid lo mincha, even without saying the word mincha. Lo, no, the mincha he said mincha. Next case was chatzi isar, and he committed to half isar, yavi isar. Shom has to bring further isar, and the question is my lab or sumid lo mincha. He didn't say the word mincha. Lo, no, he did. The mincha he said mincha. Yachi. If that's the case, now comes a big question. If he said the word mincha, Harei la mincha, chatzi isar. So since the word mincha refers to a proper mincha, he's committed to a proper mincha made of isar. Yachi, if that's the case, that he said Harei la mincha chatzi isar, emos seif. Let's move on to the next case in the Mishnah. He promised 1.5 isaron umechza. What happens? Yavishnam, he has to bring 2 full isroinos. Now, according to you, we're speaking that he said Harei la mincha, which is comprised of an isaron and a half. So why is he chayv to bring 2 isroinos? Given the Amar mincha, once he said Harei la mincha, that's it. It triggers a regular, isar and mincha, right? He has to bring 1 isar because a mincha is an isar. So then when he followed Kiyama, when he added the words chatzi isar without the word mincha anymore, because the mincha already committed him to full isar. So the word chatzi isar is an empty expression. He didn't say anything. Look at Maklomu. According to you, this whole halacha is only when he says mincha. Mincha means a proper package, a proper mincha. I bring a mincha of half of a sar and a half. So a mincha of a yisarin is a regular mincha, right? So when he adds a chatzi yisarin, he didn't add the word mincha again. So why is he chayv anything for that half? He should be okay with just 1 yisarin. Says in Malitzricha, apparently we're speaking that he switched his expression around. The Amar, he said like this: Harei la mincha chatzi yisar. I'm bringing a mincha of a half yisar, and then he added the yisar another yisar. So he said 3 points really: mincha, half, and a full. In this case, he has to bring 2. Why? The Kiv and the Amar Mincha. Because once he says Harei Mincha, he chayav to be Isarin. He's chayav to bring it fully Isarin. Right? As per the standard Mincha. Ki Amar Chatzi Isarin, Loikum Kamar. When he added the word half is nothing. Half is not a... Ki Adam, when he came back with point 3, and he said Isarin, Maisi Isarin Achrina. Now he has to bring another Isarin. So in the question, we thought that he said, I'm bringing a mincha of a sarin and a half, so the mincha relates to the sarin, and the half is ignored. No, he said, I'm bringing a mincha of a half a sarin and a sarin. So the word mincha commits him to a full isarin, and then he adds another isarin, which gets him to the second one. Yuck, if that's the case, that according to the Mishnah, Tanakam and the Mishnah, it only triggers a full obligation because he said the word mincha, which represents a proper mincha. So how do we understand the dissenting view in the Mishnah of Shimon? Shimon says, all at the end of the Mishnah, he says, no, he's pater. Why? Reb Shimon pater shelo yisnadev k'derech ha'misnadven. Because he didn't pledge a proper mincha, so he's pater. Amai. Why? The fact is, he said, harei lai mincha. A mincha is a proper mincha. Amar Rava, Reb Shimon b'shitas Reb Yisi Amra. Reb Shimon is based on Reb Shimon's halacha. The Amar says, Af b'gemara dvarav adam matfis. We don't, zero in on any given element of a person's expression. We look at the totality of his expression. Af b'gemara dvarav adam matfis. A person relates to his full expression, his full dibur. So, although he initially made reference to a mincha, that's not enough for us. We look at the totality of his expression, and since he added all kinds of invalid elements there, that disrupts the entire pledge, and he's pater completely. Okay, so in a nutshell, we have a fellow who pledged an unusual type of mincha. Tanakam says he's chayav a regular mincha. We have two explanations for that. And Hashem says he's pater. Continues the Mishnah. Misnadav Adam mincha shel shishim yisarin. Or maybe b'kli echad. So yesterday we referenced a fellow who donated a bigger mincha, a jumbo mincha, a small mincha. What's the maximum? How much flour can you pack into one container? Misnadav Adam mincha shel shishim yisarin. At most 60 yisarin. And you can put it in the same container. Maybe b'kli echad. Now there's a machlekes, by the way, whether it's just one lug of oil, so 60 pounds of flour with one lug of oil, or is it one lug of oil per isarin? We had a machlekes the other day. But in any case, at most it's 60 isarin in a bowl. Im Amar Harei Elai Samach Aleph. What if he promises 61 Isroinos? Then he has to split it, 60 and 1. Maybe Shishim Kli Echad, Ve'echad B'Kli Echad. 60 in one Kli, and 61st in the next Kli. Why are we stopping at 60? Because that's the most that we find in the Torah on the same day. Shekein HaTzibur, we find that the public, on the first day of Sukkot, where there are so many karbanis, and if it falls out on Shabbos to boot, if you calculate all the minchas, you end up with 61 total, and we assume that a yachid, a private person, has got to be one notch below. So you've got to stop at 60 in one shot. Shkein HaTzibur maybe b'yom tov rishon shel Chag, the first day of Sukkot, Shechal Shabbos happens to fall on Shabbos. If you calculate all the numerous karbanos and the minchas that accompany the karbanos, you end up with Shishim Echad 61 in total. Dayoy, it makes sense. It's fitting. It's sufficient. Lo yachid, that a private person should be one level below, one number less. Shu pachos min HaTzibur Echad should be one down. So we stop at 60. Amar Reb Shimon. So Shimon responds to this analogy. He says, how could you compare to Yom Tov, to Sukkot? We're talking about how much can you pack into one bowl. Now, the reference that you made to the first day of Sukkot, there are so many minchas, but they're separate. They're totally different formats and different kalim. What's the connection? Amar Reb Shimon aloi elu leparim ve'elu lekvasim. Right? On Sukkot, some are for the parim, which have their own consistency. The ratio, flour-oil ratio, ve'lekvasim, some are for the sheep. Ve'enam nevlolim zeim, they don't mix them together, so why is that relevant to our discussion? Ella, rather, he gives a different reason. Why we stop at 60 in the same bowl? Practically, in order to properly mix, you can't go past 60. Ella achishim yichaylim libolel. Up until 60 pounds of flour, you can mix it with the same, lug of oil. But past that point, it's not going to mix properly. Amr loy, so they asked him, you mean, really, it's going to stop at that point? Shishim, so 60 Yisrael you can mix properly, but you add a little bit more, come on. Shishim ve'echad ein nivlolim? Amr loy says, yep. This formula was determined by the Chachamim, and it's exact. This is how they, determined to be a proper mix, and past that is not. Call me this Chachamim Kain. Look around. All the measurers, the midais, the shiurim were established in a very definite way. For instance, a mikveh. Pasuk says that needs to be enough place there for the person to immerse. How much is it? Pasuk doesn't say, but we have a Kabbalah, we have a tradition, we have a certain number that we peg to it. Bar boim sa, a person needs to have 40 sa of water to do tefillah. Let's say it's 40 sa minus a half ounce. Big deal. It's a drop in the bucket. No. Bar boim sa, if it's a bar sa missing, chaser missing, even a quarter of a little drop, it's unsuitable for tefillah. So you see, all the numbers, all the shiurim are finite, are exact, non-negotiable. So this question was asked before Rabbi Dover. So how do we know that if a person committed to 61 Yisroinos, maybe he has to split it to 60 and 1? Maybe Shishim Kli Echad, Echad Kli Echad. So he responded like this. He was called the Rosh HaMedabrim, the first speaker. At an event, and it's based on the Gemara and Shabbos. There was a whole conference between the Chachamim was sitting and having a discussion. Eventually, there was trouble from the Romans, and they appointed Rabbi Dover, who seemed to have praised the Romans. So they appointed him as the head speaker. Okay, so in any case, he was always called the head speaker, and he began today's discussion as well. V'amar, he says like this: Shekein motzinu tzibur, exactly as the Mishnah. Take a look at the tzibur on the first day of Sukkot, right? They stop at 60, so 61. So that's why we determine that as being the maximum amount. Right? Shabbos, Shishim ve'echad, they bring 61. Da'il yachid. So as per a yachid, we require one less. Shivchas tzibur echad. It's fitting that he drops one below the tzibur. Shimon says, what's the connection, right? This is pretty much a repetition of the Mishnah. These are for the cows and the rams. These are for the sheep. Different consistencies, different recipes. These have a thicker consistency, less oil. These are more oily, more liquidy. They're made at different times. These are done in the morning. These are done in the afternoon. They're not going to mix with each other. So what's the relevance to our discussion where we're talking about mixing it all in one kli? Amr lo, they told him, okay, so let's hear what you have to say. If that's not good enough reason, what do you suggest? Amr lo, Amr Atish, he says, let me explain to you, practically. Amr lahem harayu, look at the pasuk. It says, V'chol mincha belul b'shem l'chareva. The Torah considers this a mixed mincha, so you have to bring a mincha that you can mix, right? Kfar Amar Torah already established. Have mincha shichalibol. You have to bring a mincha that can be mixed properly. That only works if it's 60 yisar or no less. Amar Leisi says to him, "V'shishim nivlolim." V'shishim be'achad ein nivlolim. You mean it stops? The buck stops right there. I mean, at 60 good, but past 60 it doesn't work. Amar Leisi says, yeah, it's been established by the Chachamim. And it's not only this, you find it all over. A mikveh has to have 40 saw, not a drop less. And this even a kurtiv, any you can't use it. You need an egg volume of food to be considered that transfers tumah that is present in that food, so it has to be a substantially sized piece of food. Let's say it's a kibbetz missing just a drop, kibbetz chaser shumshum missing a little sesame, amount. Another example regarding tumah, shloishal medras. You have a piece of material which is 3 tefach by 3 tefach. If a fellow who's a zav sits on it, it becomes tamei medras. If it's missing even one thread, you would think big deal. It's insignificant. No. Shloisha al shloisha chaser nima achas. If it's 3 by 3 missing even a drop, ain't matame medras. So yeah, the Chacham determined these shiurim, they're exact, non-negotiable. You can mix a mincha properly up until 60, but even add a drop, it loses its ability to be mixed properly. Ask the Gemara, okay, fine, granted. It can't be properly diluted. Just because you can't mix it properly, what's the harm? But now we have a Mishnah, even if he failed to mix it at all, it's okay. Belila is not critical, so why can't you just add 1,000,000 and don't mix it? Here comes an interesting concept. Sure, if you fail to mix it, it's okay, but it has to be roy to be mixed. The material has to allow for mixing, otherwise it's the wrong material. Torah says bring material that could be mixed. So even if you fail to mix it, okay, it passes. But if it's set up in a way that it cannot practically be mixed properly, that is the wrong material. That doesn't qualify as mincha material. Amar Reb Zera, famous Reb Zera, kol haroy labila. If it's able to be mixed, ein bila makevas, so the requirement to actually mix it is not critical. So even if you fail to mix it, it works. But v'chol she'ein haroy labila, but if it's not able to be mixed, it's overloaded, it's too much, it's the wrong format. It's like bringing barley instead of wheat. The requirement to mix it now gets in the way. Since it doesn't have that ability, it's the wrong thing. Interesting. Okay, so the bottom line is, what's the maximum they can fit into one kli? The maximum is 60. We have two explanations. Either we compare it to the tzibur on the first day of Sukkot and we drop down one, or because of its inability to be mixed properly. Amar Shimon Levi, speaking about the shiurim that were determined by the Chachamim, so he tells us like this. Ma'aseh, there was a story. We prayed to Achaz, Shobei's Rebbe. There was a mule in Rebbe's household there. Shemesa, that died. Now we know that a dead animal, which is a nevela, is matame. You touch it, become tummy. What about the blood? So the flesh, yeah. What about the blood of a dead animal? Does it also have tumah? Is it compared to the flesh or not? V'shiru chacham es dam meravius, and there was blood that trickled out, and they measure to see whether the blood has a revius halug, in which case you have to keep away from it. As we're going to see later, because a revius corresponds to a kazayis. In solid form, a kazayis of flesh, let's say, is matame. How much in liquid form? A revius, which corresponds, when it congeals, it fills a kazayis. So that amount of blood has tumas nevela. So according to this approach, even the dam of a nevela is matame, provided it has a share that corresponds to a kazayis in solid. Mosiv Rabbi Yisrael Bisna, I have a question from a Mishnah Mesechus Edyes, which teaches that there is no tumas nevelas by blood from a dead animal. Hey, Rabbi Yeshua, they both testified. Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Shua ben Meseira, dam nevelas shu tar, it's puli tar. Rabbi Shua ben Meseira, I'll even prove it to you from a story, Maaseh, a story, another story, by Yuneichen Aridiyos, La Royes. They would kill these wild donkeys. A roid is a wild dog. La roy is to feed the royal lions. Bis Tarya Shamelach. In the lion collection of the king, or whatever. Yeah, and then there was blood coming out of these dead animals. And it was in Yerushalayim. Sriracha perhaps means like the troops or whatever. In any case, they used to feed the king's lions. The people came up for Yom Tov or the regal. They would encounter this blood there. They would sometimes have to wade through this blood until their knees. But they were knee deep in the blood, and there was no issue. Nobody complained. Nobody told them off. The Chacham did not point out to the fact that they became tummy. Apparently, it's not an issue. Only the basar of an avela is matame, not the blood. Ishtik, so Rabbevi, who had presented this halacha to the extent that the blood is an issue, now upon hearing this story, was silenced. He didn't have an answer. Rabzika says to him, why are you just taking that like that? My time, why don't you respond? He says, I'm not fully focused. I don't have the ability to really argue my point. How do you expect me to respond? I'm distracted. I'm overwhelmed with parnasa issues. As Reb Chanan teaches, that the pasuk by the Teichacha, in describing, Chas v'shalom, a person's, desperate state of financial affairs, your life will be sort of hanging over you, in front of you, which means to say you'll have a life of financial uncertainty. Who's that going on? A person who's not secure in his finances. So in those days it was a matter of supplying oneself with actual food. He doesn't have his own farm, he's got to go find once a year, every year, he's got to find some tvua, some grain. He doesn't have his own source of grain. So he's unsettled, doesn't have proper focus, doesn't have proper security. The pasuk continues that the more desperate state of uncertainty, he's fearful night and day. When a person doesn't even have the ability to buy 1 year's supply at a shot, which gives a person a certain measure of security. Okay, at least this year I'm good. This fellow is buying every week. Every Shabbos he's going to the local supplier to buy his tvua. He doesn't have enough money for more, so that's an even more insecure situation. And furthermore, a person who doesn't have emunah b'chayecha doesn't feel secure at all. A person who has to go buy bread by the palter, by the bakery every day. So basically, that contributes to a person's insecurity and anxiety. Vahu Gavran, he's talking about himself now. Our baby, he says, look, I fit that third category. Al Pato Samech, I got to go every day to buy my bread. Therefore, as Rashi says, Ve'in daiti miyushav, I don't have yishav adas. So even the great Chachamim, it's not just us, the great Chachamim. It was hard to focus, hard to be miyushav when things are uncertain and things are fluid. So, what do you expect from me? I couldn't answer. Okay, what's the bottom line after this whole back and forth? We have a question on hand. Is dam of an avela matami or not? Amar Rav Yosef. Let me tell you, Rabbi Yehuda, there was a Chacham called Rabbi Yehuda, who was the Moiraina, the Venesia. He was the Dayan, the Moira Hira. He was the Rav. He used to pass on the Shilas of the base Rebbe, the base Hanasi. And he, so I guess it's referring back to that story of the Preda that died, right? And he wanted to know what to do with the blood. So the Paisik told him like this. He responded to them. He ruled to them as per his own presentation, as his own version, which is actually contained in a Mishnah. This time we find that Rabbi Yehuda, Omer, Shishat Rabbi Yehuda himself, teaches us 6 things. Mikule Beishamai, Umichumar Beisilo. Typically, Beishamai are the ones who are more strict. First, we'll explain Beishamai relate to Midas Hadin, expression of strictness, whereas Beisilo relate to Midas HaChesed, more of the benevolent track. So even in their understanding of Torah, each one related to a different aspect of Torah. So typically we find that Beishamai is more mach, more strict, Beisilo more lenient. There are several exceptions, 6 of which we find right here. Shishadvar mikule Beishamai, Mchumer Beisilo. In 6 halachas we find that Beishamai are the Mekel, Beisilo are the Machmer. One of the 6 relates to our question, Dam Nevela, Dam of Nevela. Beishamai metar, they consider it to be Torah. It's not the flesh, it's not metame, it's not nevela. Ubeisil metamin. They still say that just as the flesh of an nevela is metame, likewise the blood. So that was his conclusion. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. So basically, the son of Rabbi Yehuda explains his father's position. Af kishetim beisil, even beisil who consider the blood to be tamei, letimol beravius, provided it's a revius in quantity, as we explained before, because that corresponds to a kazayis in solid. Hoyel v'yochal likrosh, since when it congeals, since it could, right, congeal and turn into a kazayis, without a kazayis. And therefore, just like if it were to be solid nevela, a kazayis of which would be metame, likewise, if it's in its liquid form, if it has the same corresponding quantity, it is metame to mas nevela. Okay, so the discussion now in Mishnah spoke about the shiurei chachamim, which according to Reb Shimon was the basis for setting the limit at 60. That triggered a whole discussion. We found other examples of shiurei chachamim that were determined with exactness and precision, like the 40 saw of the mikveh, kibbutz of tumas oichlin, the shleish of metame midras, and another interesting shiur-related discussion, the daman of an avela, which is metame, according to Beisilel, it's only provided it has a proper shiur, which was established by the chacham as being revius, which corresponds to a kazayis in solid. All the best to you, and hatzlach.